Hi, I'm Mackenzie Day. I'm presenting on Shining Path, or Sendero Luminoso. It's actually my second time. My first time was 13 minutes, which I don't think you want anything that long. So Sendero Luminoso was a terrorist organization in Peru between 1980 and 1992. So we're going to start with some historical background. There was agrarian reform going on in this area of Peru where Sendero Luminoso rose from. It's called Ayacucho. It's in the southern highlands of Peru. So in Ayacucho, it was all peasants, indigenous people, very poor. And the military governments that were ruling Peru took the land from the large, wealthy hacienda owners, and they turned it into collectives and gave all the land to the peasants. And that sounds great, except the land lost all value because the government made poor agricultural investment choices, so it actually worsened the lives of the peasants. So the peasants in the area really needed someone to step up and protect them because they were not making any money. They died way younger than everyone else in Peru. They only got 70% of the calories you're supposed to eat every day. They were illiterate. The situation there was not good. So how did Sendero Luminoso rise out of this? Well, first of all, Ayacucho is very remote. There's no one around, so the government didn't realize what was happening right in front of them. In 1959, a radical university opened there, and a lot of the founders of Sendero Luminoso came from that radical university, including the leader, Abimel Guzman. He was a philosophy professor at the university. He founded the Communist Party of Peru in 1968, but they were not willing to participate in violence against the government, so then in 1970, he splintered off and formed the terrorist organization Shining Path. Shining Path basically spent 20 years between 1960 and 1980 building really strong ties with the peasant community there so that when they finally did start participating in violence against the government, they had very strong support in the rural regions of Peru. They would marry into the local peasant families, they learned the indigenous language. These are just some of the examples of how they gained support. So the goals of Sendero Luminoso was, it was first of all, a Maoist organization, which is a kind of a form of communism that the peasants should rise up in a class struggle. They wanted to gain rural support and then encircle the cities and take over. This particular terrorist organization, Sendero Luminoso, believed that since the Spanish conquest, there had not been a single legitimate government in Peru. So they wanted to take over the current government and create a nationalistic Indian government. So how it was organized, it was very secretive. You had party cells of 5 to 9 people, and each cell had a leader. You only knew the members in your cell. When they had larger organization meetings, they wore masks. So if someone was caught and tortured, you couldn't give away the identities of more than 5 to 9 other members. In total, the organization never exceeded more than a few thousand members. To kind of look at breakdown of who was joining this terrorist organization, the Popular Guerrilla Army, which was the branch of Sendero Luminoso that participated in violence, that army had 50% rural peasants and 50% middle-class university intellectuals. So in 1980, the violence begins. They started in Ayacucho and then slowly spread to the rest of Peru. By 1992, they had influence in 114 of Peru's departments. So in 1980, they started by kicking the police out of Ayacucho. They also forced all the wealthy landowners away and made them leave their property behind for the peasants, kind of like Robin Hood in a way. And they canceled all the peasant debts. They assassinated local officials, bombed public buildings, and released the prisoners in the Ayacucho Department prison. And then they spread their influence to Lima. They occupied the shanty towns around Lima for about a decade, and this was strategic because all the city's water lines and electrical lines ran through the shanty towns, so they were able to attack the electrical grid and turn off the water supply. They often bombed the busy markets in Lima as well. And then their biggest success story was probably in Huallaga Valley. That's where cocaine was grown. They established kind of a protector relationship with the coca farmers in the region, because at the time U.S. had the war on drugs. Well, it's still going on, but the counter-drug policies were affecting the coca farmers there. So Sendero Luminoso came in, they took over all 120 of the landing strips in the area, and by protecting the coca farmers, they were able to tax the cocaine trade, and that's how they made money. So how did the government respond to this? I don't think they did a very good job. They were just as corrupt and horrific as Sendero Luminoso. In Ayacucho, for example, they went in 1982, and between the years of 1984 and 1985, the military presence there went on a rampage, and they massacred people, they tortured people, they raped a lot of the peasant women. In the end, 3,000 peasants in that department alone were killed. They didn't have a adequate judicial system for prosecuting the suspects, so even if they caught a member of Sendero Luminoso, they often didn't know what to do with them. One general of the Peruvian government, General Arciniega, managed to drive them out of Hualga Valley, where all the cocaine was, until it was exposed that he was actually profiting from the cocaine trade. So he was reassigned, and Sendero Luminoso took over the region again. Internationally, the international community wasn't as concerned with Sendero Luminoso as they were with the war on drugs. So that's how Peru got the U.S. to sign an agreement in 1991 that the U.S. would provide financial aid for economic and security needs if Peru promised to step up the war on drugs. They also got a financial package from the International Monetary Fund and World Bank in October of 1991 for economic stabilization. In 1992, the leader, Abumal Guzman, was captured in his apartment in Lima, and Sendero Luminoso absolutely collapsed into chaos. It splintered off into multiple factions that were fighting amongst themselves. They never again had the influence that they did in the 1980s. They became more like criminal organizations working with the cocaine trade. So in the end, when you look at the definition of terrorist organization, which is here, when you say, obviously, when you look at this definition, Sendero Luminoso is a terrorist organization. It is premeditated. They planned for 20 years before they ever took any action. It was politically motivated violence. Sendero Luminoso wanted to take over the government. Perpetrated against non-combatant targets. Yes, they attacked innocent people all over Peru, especially in the markets of Lima, and wealthy landowners. And it says by subnational groups. And yes, they never did achieve national status. So, Sendero Luminoso was indeed a terrorist organization. Maybe when you look at it from the view of the rural peasants, it could have been, you know, a Robin Hood type situation where the rural peasants, no one was looking after them, they had a subsistence crisis, they didn't have basic needs to survive, and Sendero Luminoso stepped in, did protect them. So, you know how the saying goes, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Thanks.